Welcome back to Perspectives. The Lebanese army is reportedly preparing for an upcoming assault against Islamic State militants in the border area between Lebanon and Syria with the help of U.S. special forces. But the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah also announced it would be taking part in the assault on the Islamic State, saying that Hezbollah and the Syrian army will simultaneously attack the group from the Syrian side of the border. The Lebanese military says it's operating alone. But some suspect the army may be coordinating with Hezbollah, a move that is raising concerns here in Israel. Hezbollah has been a key ally of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad during the 6-year conflict. Recently, the group has boasted a few successes in the operations against the al-Nusra militants along the Syrian-Lebanese border. Earlier, former U.S. Senator Joe Lieberman explained on our show Crossroads why Israel is concerned about the latest developments.
The influence of Hezbollah in not only Lebanon, but more to the point Syria, is the result of the failure of the United States and the rest of the civilized world to come to the aid of the freedom fighters who rose up against Assad now almost 6 years ago. And it created a vacuum into which Iran sent Hezbollah. Remember, basically Hezbollah is a proxy army for Iran. Iran supplies them, directs them. They'll do whatever the supreme leader of Iran wants them to do, and it's now a very dangerous situation. And again, because Hezbollah has been supplied with thousands of missiles, rockets, with which they can, if they want, attack Israel. Israel has developed, with our help, a tremendous capacity through Iron Dome. David Sling is coming on, the ability to shoot down a missile coming in. But the Hezbollah has an awful lot of missiles. Now, what may hold them up is that they know that the Israelis will not tolerate that kind of attack. And if Hezbollah attacks Israel with missiles from the air, the Israelis will attack Lebanon. And that, in my opinion, will hurt Hezbollah in Lebanese politics. So they've now become not just a radical terrorist group, in my opinion, but they've become a political movement in Lebanon, and they want to remain popular. And giving the Israelis a reason to attack Lebanon again will not keep them popular.
For more on these reports, I'm now joined by Matthew RJ Brodsky, a senior fellow at the Security Studies Group in Washington, D.C. Matthew, thanks so much for being with us.
Great to be with you.
So we keep talking about these reports that the U.S. is, in fact, helping the Lebanese army, and now that perhaps Hezbollah is also involved. Should Israel be concerned? We just heard from former Senator Lieberman that Israel does have capabilities to strike back, but that this is a worrisome fact for Israel. What is your opinion?
Well, yeah, if I were Israeli, everything involved in this would raise a series of really bright red flags. See, this is a well-coordinated con that's being carried out by Hezbollah with Prime Minister Hariri of Lebanon, who, of course, is controlled by Hezbollah and the Lebanese armed forces. So it's a really bad policy, and the most charitable reading is that it's just not been fully thought through by the U.S. The LAF today is merely an arm and partner of Hezbollah. Lebanon itself is under Hezbollah's control, and that means it's all just another part of Iran. So this is definitely a worrisome development for Israel.
Now, looking at the American interests in this conflict, we've heard that the U.S. is reportedly helping the Lebanese forces, whatever that may entail, because of the goal of defeating the Islamic State militants along the border. Is that really working towards that goal, and does that really convolute the U.S. goal in the Middle East in some senses?
Well, okay, perhaps this is a backward and self-defeating policy, and it's the result, perhaps, of a new president who hasn't changed the previous course that we were on under the Obama administration. Maybe the Trump administration just doesn't understand the intricacies of the Lebanese quagmire. I mean, President Trump certainly didn't understand or seem to understand any of these intricacies when Prime Minister Hariri was visiting the White House. You know, maybe the fact is that there are too many Obama holdovers who are still in the State Department who are running policy. And if it's not the State Department that's running the U.S. policy in the Middle East, then it's the generals who have been put in charge of it. And it's those generals who have been tasked with destroying ISIS. So unfortunately, they're pursuing ISIS, and that's just their goal. But no one seems to be taking into account the overall strategy, the overall goal of the campaign, which would also be to push back against Iran. So in the meantime, what we have is the United States essentially playing the role where they're guaranteeing a land bridge, not preventing it, from Iran into Lebanon. It's a bad policy, and it absolutely needs to change as soon as possible.
Now, look, a little bit wider look also involving Syria. I want to return to the part of this report where Hezbollah said that they'll be fighting on the Syrian side of the border against these militants with the Syrian army. Now, there's a number of things we could dissect from that statement. But first of all, the fact that the Syrian army is put together enough at this point to be fighting these militants with Hezbollah and in cooperation with the Lebanese army and then perhaps also with American forces. Can you break that down for us a little bit?
All right. Number one, this form of logic would be the same thing as saying, well, the Marines will attack from the east, but the U.S. Army will attack from the west. It's all the U.S. Armed Forces. It doesn't make a difference. So in this context, it doesn't make a difference that Hezbollah is on one side of the border and the LAF is on the other. But in a larger context, the reason Hezbollah is taking charge here is because A, this is close to their border and close to a situation that's important to them, and B, because of a really another potentially catastrophic decision by the Trump administration, which is how they're dealing with Syria to the east. See, with the conflict now moving to Deir el-Zor in the east, which is a border area near Iraq and Syria, that's where Syrian forces themselves are now gathered. They're freed up from a ceasefire that was worked out with Russia from northwest Syria to go deal with the east. So they can leave all of this to Hezbollah, and now America is playing the role of a screen or a foolish role, really, where it's now working not with the Assad regime, but it frankly is helping by working with the Lebanese armed forces and with Hezbollah. And so all of this is coming up roses if you're Iran, and the same if you're Iran. And I'm sure Russia is sitting back there going, wow, this is a lot easier than I thought.
Perhaps. Now, just very briefly, we have a little under a minute left, but looking at the U.S. strategy, you've pointed out several times that this seems to be mistaken, the line of strategy that the U.S. is currently employing in the region. What would you say they should do instead? Or is that an easily answerable question?
Well, it's easily answered. To get there appears complicated. There's a circular firing squad within the White House and within the National Security Council, and that's who is tasked. The National Security Council, they're the ones tasked with reviewing the Iran deal and the entire Iran policy. But with the musical chairs going on there, the Iran policy has not taken place. It's not done. So when we deal in the context of the Iran deal itself, that comes up every 3 months, that the U.S. has to decide whether Iran is complying with the deal. So again, in October, just like in July and in April, the United States is going to end up in a situation where maybe this time there'll finally be a policy that's set for Iran. But in the meantime,
certainly. Well, as you said, something the U.S. will have a very soon coming opportunity to go over. Matthew, thank you so much for that analysis. We'll go now to a quick break. We'll be back in just a few minutes.